Hi everyone, Andal here, and this is my sister Mary, and we're Drunken Sisters Review. And in this video, we are going to review The Witcher, the game, the book, the show. I almost said movie.
And this is one that I think is a good one for us to do right now because it's pretty fresh, I think, in both of our minds. Both the show, the books, and the game.
Yes,
overall. All. I can count.
Just so you know, bottle and half of wine. We're on our 4th and 5th shots of tequila.
That's right. And I heard recently that Netflix, and I watch a lot of Netflix. Netflix has announced that there's definitely going to be a second season.
They are recording it right now, I think. Or they might even be editing it at this point.
I don't know at that stage. But I did watch their little jokes of extracurricular content.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm gonna
they have extra content. And there are some really cool things in there, but they're too short. Like, it's like 5 minutes.
I have watched the ones where they had the actors read from the books. That was cool.
I did not watch that.
It is really cool to see Henry Cavill.
To see Henry Cavill.
It was.
Period.
To a certain degree with the Witcher books, to tie back into what we're actually supposed to be talking about. You're missing some nuances in the show, but the show actually stays pretty close to...
I think they did. I think they got the essence very good. Now, and obviously, they changed a lot of...
little things,
a lot of the details.
I feel sad that they had to change the genie joke.
Oh, you're going to have to specify that one.
Okay, so the vanishing word in the book is... It's not a vanishing word. It's his wish. And the genie's really mad at what he wishes.
Well, in the
that might have been in the book too.
Okay. I have read the first 3 books.
Oh, then you don't remember. It's in one of the... It's either book 1 or book 2.
Book 2?
With the genie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
But so spoiler, ignore this part. Come back in a few moments, or like 10 seconds. He yells, "Go fuck yourself," to the genie in another language. That he had learned this phrase from a priestess somewhere.
Wait, that's not the final wish, is it?
No, that's the first wish.
Okay, because I'm like,
that's when the genie disappears because he basically ordered him to go.
Then why does it hurt?
And
Jasper?
Well, maybe it's the second wish. I don't remember. But, like, he orders him to go fuck himself. So the genie comes back super pissed off.
No, because the second wish is to explode his head. To explode the jailer. So maybe he just goes away.
No, that's right. He hurts Jasker.
Because he tells him that he wants him to...
No, that's in the show. He hurts Jasker because Jasker's trying to control him, and he hasn't realized that the Witcher's the one who's in control of him.
They don't explain that in the story.
Yeah, they do. So he... It's kind of implied.
Oh.
So he's trying to kill Jasker before Jasker can make a wish. And that's when Witcher yells, "Go fuck yourself." So the genie has to leave and go do as he's commanded.
Oh.
And that's why he comes back super angry. And everybody, like, every time everybody's like, what vanishing spell did you use? And he says the words, and they're like, oh God.
But I don't remember getting that.
So I'm kind of sad.
I have to reread that book now.
I'm kind of sad that wasn't in the show.
Yeah.
I will say the show does stay really close. A lot of people complain about the switching back and forth between past and present. That's the book. They were following the book.
They do that in the book. So that's where I think a lot of that essence of the show. Well, there are a lot of details that do get changed. A lot of things that they felt either they had to change or they felt would make a better fit for probably American audiences. Let's not lie. It's probably trying to fit for that, or to what producers and the money wanted in the film, or in the show. I almost said movie too. Wanted in there as well. But all in all, I think they do a really good job putting that together. I think the show actually does a better job of humanizing Yennefer, which is really interesting. And there's a lot that you can go into with Witcher. Witcher in all of its formats is very complex and problematic and wonderful, all at the same time. There's a lot of stuff, and like I said, I've only read 3 of the books. I don't know.
I'm on the 4th, so we haven't gotten through the whole series.
And my understanding is that the series was actually written in the 80s as well. We're kind of introductory into the book world on this one. I mean, when you really think about it, I'm sure there are many of the Witcher fans that go back to the beginning who are like, you guys are little babies, and how dare you discuss this series? And I respect that, but we're new to this. This is something that's introductory to us and in many ways, and we're not going to be dogmatic. Honestly, we're not really dogmatic about it.
No. And to be fair, we have read 3 of the books.
Right.
We have played the games.
The show.
She's played 1. I've played 2. Tried to play 3, but my computer does not like working with the second one, so I keep having glitches that keep me from playing it.
So we have a lot of things to review in this particular thing. A lot of things to comment on. A lot of distractions to get. And sidetracks to take. When I played the game, I hadn't read any of the books, I'd seen the show, but I hadn't read any of the books. And the character Yennefer is very different in the show, in particular, than she is in the movie.
You mean the game?
Or the game. In the game. Why movie keeps popping up?
She is more like the Yennefer in the books.
In the
game is not like the books or the show. Like, it has...
See, I feel like the Yennefer in the game feels a lot more like the Yennefer. Now,
I think her personality is more like the book.
She's very caustic.
Yeah.
In these 2.
Like, she's very dry, whereas I feel like
she's just dry. She's legitimately mean and vindictive.
Yeah, whereas I feel like the one in the show,
she's humanized.
Yeah,
more.
She's also overly dramatic compared to what she is in the game and the book. She's not overly dramatic compared to other characters per se.
I don't know if I'd say that. I kind of disagree with that vibe. I feel like the game and the book. She's still an incredibly strong character, and she's still all 3 of them. She is a bitch. And
no, I hate her need for she's like, I give up my uterus, and I'm good for the power. Oh, I want babies.
What I think is frustrating in this character in particular is that this character, she does not, at any point in any of the formats, make a decision that she has not thought out. She doesn't do anything without knowing what it means now and what it means in the future. And so for her to come back and be like, I saw this dead baby and now I want babies, like, yeah, it's a deeply oversimplification of the situation. Like, I can understand coming back and looking back forward and saying, like, I made a mistake. I understand now that this is what I would want more and what it means and blah, blah, blah. But I still feel like Yennefer's character wouldn't see it that way. And she'd be more the type that's like...
to accept her consequences.
And adopt.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that too.
That's one of the obvious things, she really wanted to raise a child.
And that's what Sirius sort of kind of be. You would think at the very least after interacting with Sirius, she'd be like, oh yeah, adoption.
But this woman is almost 200 years old, right? To most of the math I can figure out, she can.
And they're like in the game, especially, you don't see it as much in the show and in the book, but there are orphans all over the freaking place.
All over the place. It's been war for a very long time.
But I feel like when you listen to the things she says about other circumstances, it's kind of like there are consequences to your choices. You accept the consequences. You deal with it. This one, she's like, it wasn't my fault, even though I made the choice. It's your fault, and we must change it, and that's what everything's about.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. She's not that type of character in my mind to sit down and be that person that's like, my decisions are not my fault. Every other thing seems to be like, I made a decision, the consequences are mine, and I will move on. You know what I mean? But this particular thing, in all of the formats that I've seen, have been like I came in late, because in Witcher 3 it's already over. That aspect of it. She's already raised Ciri, and Ciri is her daughter. But, like, it's like, I don't know. 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 It's particularly in the show, really emphasizes it. And so far in the first 3 books that I've read,
it's more
there, but it's not to that
yeah, they're
extent.
starting to show that. They haven't gotten into a lot of the deeper connections.
Right. And so it's like, that one thing is somehow not her fault, even though she knew what was happening and what that choice would be.
And that she was warned, and like especially in the show, people are like, you may not want to do that. You know the cost of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what will happen if you make this choice.
Right.
I know, just do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she made a choice.
Yeah. So I think that's in the show in particular, that's the most problematic for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think part of that has to say, as far as, because in the games and in the books, there's definitely other things as a woman that are problematic. Not as many as in other things I've read, but definitely, I think from
there's a little bit more of the male fantasy in the game and the book.
Absolutely. But
more so the game
more
than
so
the
game than the book. The book has some problems, and there's 2 in particular that I can think of right off the top of my head. The game in particular has the cliche stuff that most games do. But in the show is created by a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so largely influenced from that, and in part I think that's where you see a lot more of that humanization of Yennefer. Yes, she is still a bitch. Yes, she is still absolutely stubborn and cold and calculating, and she wants what she wants, and she will not compromise. Period. But she is human in a way that I feel like is not as well expressed in the books. You also have to think about this too. This is not a modern era. Right. This is not a world set in our world where we have the luxury of safety, security, home, hearth, food, clothing, any of that. This is a world that everything is fought and bled and struggled for. And if you go back not that long in human history, which is obviously the era that this is coming from, you would find a lot more human beings that way. And so it's easy from our standpoint to look back at her and be like, well, she's not very nice.
Well, I want to say on this too, like as you pointed out, this was written in the 80s originally in another country. In a country
that was taken over by another country that had fought wars, had some. This is a very complex book when you put it into our own.
And
society.
Yennefer and Triss and Ciri are complex female characters, which is something a lot of writers struggle with even today.
Yeah.
For creating complex female characters.
And so if you watch Netflix and you're a nerd like me and you like all the extras, so Netflix did just in the last few weeks put up, I guess maybe in the last month or so, depending on when this posts. Netflix put up a series of specials to essentially announce that a second season of Witcher is coming out, and so they're kind of making of and a little bit background on the show that they made, and so they talk, in my opinion, honestly, as a giant nerd, not enough about it because they're very short little things. Like, they do, like, the making of each episode, which is, like, 5 minutes long, and I'm like, you could super go into more than this. And then there's another little series that they do that's kind of about the making of the show in general. And they talk a little bit, very briefly, about the complexity of the female characters and the strength of the female characters. Because when these came out, the female characters are very atypical. They're atypical for now. To have women who are absolutely unapologetically stubborn and bitchy, and that's okay, and they're the love interests, and they're powerful people.
And the male characters are not necessarily upset about them being bitches.
And they are not, and the male characters are not subjugated either, because that happens too so much of the time. And they had asked, I'm gonna say his name, Andrzej, the author, how he decided to write such strong women. And apparently he had said, well, I guess you never met my mother. And that was all there was to it. He's like, I don't understand. And I think that makes a lot, because he grew up in a country that had been, the men in particular, had been devastated by war. And so there were so many more women who took over absolutely all of the responsibilities. And his mother was one of these women that had to take on so many more responsibilities. And it was like, and honestly, if you're that woman who everything has been devastated, where you're taking care of your kids and working and feeding them and doing literally everything to keep your household physically alive,
and still existing in a culture that downgrades your contribution to it,
you're gonna be kind of bitchy, and you're gonna be damn stubborn. And I think that kind of is a reflection of this in a lot of ways, and obviously simplification of the situation, but I mean, that makes, I thought that was really interesting, where he was like, all he had to say was, you didn't meet my mother.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. In the books, there were two places in particular that I had problems with reading. That one of them was in the story where they're hunting the dragon. So in the story where they're hunting the dragon in the show, so spoilers if you haven't done any of it, versus the book is a little different. And in the book, our main characters, Yennefer, Geralt, and Jaskier, get captured. And Yennefer is almost raped, and her shirt is ripped open, and she's exposed. And Jaskier is staring at her with her breasts exposed, and she's telling him to stop, and he's like, well, I'm going to see what I'm going to see because I'm going to die.
Jaskier is definitely a less enjoyable character in the books than he is in the game or the show. I would say I enjoy his character the most in the show.
Yeah. Because
he seems to be a more mature character, which is saying a lot if you only watch the show. There are very questionable things he does and says in both the games and the books that make you like, you're kind of a sleazebag.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas
he's definitely a sleazebag.
In the show, he's a player, but he's
harmless.
Yeah.
You know, he's like,
he's not great.
If you're willing, I'm willing too. Huzzah.
Like, he's still, like, when he talks about how he's going to rewrite the story of what happened, even though he sympathizes with the elves, he's going to write the song so that it's anti-elf. You know, he's still not a great guy.
No. He's not a hero.
Yeah, Jaskier has a lot of really icky things in all formats.
They all do icky things. But in particular in the books, they all do icky things.
But they kind of discuss most of the time in the book when they're doing icky things, like, I know I'm not doing something right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm intentionally, like, I'm making the choice to be an ass.
See, I feel like Geralt really does.
Yeah. And
Geralt really thinks about, and I think in most of the formats, Geralt really thinks about everything.
Jaskier's the one that gives the least thought to his ickiness.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, you want to like him because he's funny, and sometimes he's really cute and sweet. But then he does some really icky things. Yeah. And so, as a whole, I'm not the biggest Jaskier fan. I love how they play him in the show. I love bits and pieces of him in the game and the book.
Right. He's the guy that is going to be, if you're at a party, he's going to be one of these guys. Like, hey,
right.
How are ya? But, yeah, Geralt thinks about absolutely everything he does. The other thing that bothered me was actually the first instance when he meets, and I don't remember her name right now, but she's in this game.
Triss?
No, Triss.
The
doctor, the medic.
Yeah, how can I remember her name? It's a really simple name.
It is, yeah. But she's a cool character. She's a really powerful character. And in the book, you meet her, and she's in basically medical school. And she meets Geralt, and she's 17 in the book, and he's 100,
Yeah.
90. And they have sex about 20 minutes after they meet. And that's one of those things where you're just like, no, so not cool.
Shawnee.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Shani.
And you're just like, no.
Yeah.
No, he's of
There's
indeterminate
a
age.
priestess where I think she might have been around. She was a younger priestess that, I think that's how the book 1 starts. He's sleeping with her, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's another one where it's like,
They don't say how old she is, but she's young.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a little, and what also bothered me was when Yennefer was jealous of like pubescent Ciri as a competition for Geralt's affections, like sexual affections, and it was like, I don't like this.
Right.
Like, this is, like, why would you, ever want to be with somebody that you thought a 10-year-old girl is your sexual competition? Like, that right there would be like, I'll just kill him and be done.
Right.
Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, I'm jealous of you. It'd be like,
so we shall murder him?
do I need to kill somebody?
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, that was disturbing as well. So the books, in so many ways, especially the first 3 books, you get this aspect of this retelling of certain fairy tales. So we get a Beauty and the Beast, we get a Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, we get,
and you get that a little bit in the show, but
not
it's
to the same degree,
like,
though.
no, it's
so,
easier to overlook the fact that you are hearing the traditional
well, like the story of
stories.
Renfrey is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and you don't get that at all in the story.
Right,
You
yeah.
get the huntsman aspect, but there's nothing in there about the 7 dwarves or the 7 men that she gets with.
There are mentions within it that you're like, oh,
Yes.
that is a fairy tale. So you know that there are fairy tales being mentioned in the show. But the book, it's very obvious that this is a retelling of traditional fairy tales.
Yeah, and it's so interesting the way that they do, the way that he does it, that it, you get it, it's a retelling of fairy tales, and not all of them are.
No.
There's other stories in there, but it just...
Yeah, it's like if you were to describe it as the side quests of the book.
Yeah.
Are the fairy tales. The main quest is the original story.
Yeah. And a little bit in between.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little overlap.
Yeah, and so the books come in these, each chapter is it's more or less the short story. It's like a short story of Geralt's life. Each little chapter is a chapter in Geralt's life, something that they're doing, and the way that it happens, and you can see them in the game, and you can see them in the show, but they're different, and they almost take a little deciphering sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where like when you're reading through the book, like the part that Renfrey's in there, and you're like, okay, here's Renfrey, and then you're like, oh, this is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Like, didn't catch that in the show.
Right, yeah.
And when Geralt and Jaskier are captured by the fawn creature, in the show, that's in the books, but when you're reading it, you don't realize you're there. And then I rewatched the show, and I was like, oh, that's what that is, and that's where we're at, and there's more detail into it, and you get more into the stories of the world that they're in, the mythology that they're in, but at the same time, you don't. It's, they talk about, the merging of the spheres, and you're like, okay, what is that? And they're like, moving on.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and that kind of puts me onto another point too. So like Geralt is really interesting as a character because his morality, the reality of his morality, is 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
The world that he lives in is not.
And his morality does not actually work in the world he's living in.
Exactly, and that is his conundrum as a character. And so you have this situation too, which they use it almost word for word in the show as they do in the book, where he talks about his fresh out of the woods, out of Kaer Morhen experience, where he goes to rescue the girl who's being raped. She's been ripped out of her father's wagon away from his arms and is being raped by these marauders. And he kills the marauders. And he expects a hero's thanks. And she pukes and cries.
And calls him a monster, I think, too.
No, she just pukes and cries. And he interprets that as her calling him a monster. Like, he never says that she calls him a monster. She pukes and cries. This girl is absolutely devastated in basically every way she possibly could be devastated. There's not a whole lot of other reactions. She has no actual thought to have aside from visceral reaction, and it becomes this interpretation that he's being treated as a monster.
In that situation, that's just a failed perception on him. Like, he's perceiving one thing, but ignoring the mitigating factors too.
I agree.
But I think when it comes to morality, though, what comes out stronger in the books, in the movie or show, is the lesser two evils. Well, I pick no evil comment. Yeah. But which I get, like, you know, and we talk about that a lot, even in our modern day situations, where, you know, why pick an evil? But then I think what the show and the book does really good about is, if he doesn't pick a side, it gets a lot worse.
It gets picked for him either way.
Yeah,
that's essentially what happened. It got picked for him.
Well, he could have chosen to stay out, and it wouldn't have been picked for him.
He could have chosen to leave, but it still would have been picked for him in a sense, because one of them would have won, and evil would have won out.
Well, and every time he tries not to act, like, so.
But that's when he chose. What I'm saying is that time is when he chose not to act, because he specifically says, after that, I decided to stay out of man's issues and only fight monsters. But because he doesn't comprehend that scenario. It's a scenario where he has a dream of being this idealized white knight.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be
the hero.
Not just be the hero, recognized as the hero.
Yeah.
So there is his character flaw. One of his character flaws, but
that's the one that really arcs through the whole story, though.
Yeah.
Like, everything he does, that you see it. He has other little things, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, but he wants to be the White Knight, and I think it is that there is that pressure of the, you know, there's an evil, greater, lesser evils, greater, lesser, middling, as they put it. It's all evil, and I don't want to make a choice, and it's destiny and all that. But you can choose not to make a choice, but a choice will be made, and that's the thing. And in Geralt's particular situation, he has power, and he has power in ways that he doesn't recognize, in ways that destiny has given him, but he has power in this world to actually make a choice.
Yeah. That his choices can affect change.
Exactly.
I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of times, especially in books, but in reality, even when you're somebody smaller, you feel like your choices can't affect change. He, to a certain degree, is even aware that his choices can affect change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's aware in many ways that even the little person makes change, because in the game and in the show, he almost takes greater caution with people of smaller power and the power that they have over their own lives. And so I think to sit down and say that, or to looking at Geralt is complex, and in all the different formats is complex, which is wonderful. He's a really interesting character for all the problems that, as a woman, you see in the era, as a person who people of color may see. There's a lot of other questions that come in there, because the power Geralt has, and destiny is a big thing in this, but if you remove even destiny from it, Geralt has a ton of power in his world. And the people that he runs upon, even the smaller people, the weaker people, all have power in their world
Mm-hmm.
and affect change in the world and affect change in their own lives. Each individual little story has its own little vignette of somebody that has the ability to affect either their own life drastically or the lives of their township drastically.
Though, unlike him, a lot of those people are not aware of that power.
Absolutely. Geralt's not aware of his power.
I don't think he's fully aware of his power, but he knows that he can do things to...
Geralt blinds himself to his actual political power.
Alright.
You know, that's the thing, is Geralt actually, and you see it in particular in the game, but Geralt, he's had over a century of life, and his century of life has connected him with multiple sorcerers.
I don't think he's completely clueless to his political power. I think he is choosing to ignore the political power.
True.
And be like, I'm not a politician, so this is not my place.
I'm just a witcher. I'm here for monsters. Like,
I don't do this king stuff, royal stuff, politics stuff.
Yeah.
But I think on some level he's aware that he has effect. Because you would have to assume his character incredibly dumb for his age and his
is
experience.
Obviously not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's forceful ignorance. Like he is aware, but he's choosing to ignore it.
I think there's a certain feeling to Geralt that he wants one and both of two things.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be that heroic, exalted white knight, and he wants to be a sweet nobody.
Right. He wants to be left alone and not have to deal with the world's problems.
Yeah. There's a lot in the books. There's a lot more in the books, I think, to go through than there is in the game and the show.
We are only about halfway through the books, too.
True,
so...
yeah, we don't have the complete bit. What I have to say on the books in particular is that the perspective on the books, the way that it delves through people, is very different than most other authors. It's incredibly insightful into the human psyche in the sense that no one is one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's one character in this book that is in the series that I've read so far who's hollow, who is single-minded, who is empty.
Right.
Everyone has more to them than you would initially suspect, than most authors would really give that character credit for. And I found that deeply enticing and in certain ways really intoxicating. It was so much fun going through and meeting each of these characters, whether they were
recurring or just one time.
Right. Even in the Beauty and the Beast story with the vampire character, she was not a one-sided character, and you didn't see much about her, but in what you found out about her, there was more. There was more to every character in there, and people that are villains are not fully villainous. People who are good are not fully good. And everyone is so much more complex than most fantasy writers, most writers in general, really give characters. And he does so in a way that is really simple. It feels easy. It doesn't feel like something that he's working to, where he's explaining to you anything. It simply is. And I thought that was really, really refreshing in a lot of ways.
And yet, along that, the bad guys are not exactly bad. The good guys are not exactly good.
Yeah.
But you understand the reasons why they're doing things.
Yeah, you sympathize with almost everyone, at least a little bit.
Almost. There are
Not
a couple
everyone,
people that you're like, you're really just an ass and deserve to die.
Yeah.
But most of the characters that really stick around or play a major part, even if it's just a major part in one of those little subsections,
a little vignette,
you don't fully hate them if they're bad. You don't fully love them if they're good.
It's kind of like Jaskier.
Yeah.
He's a creeper.
But you kind of want to like him.
Kind of like him.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone probably more focused on Witcher than we have the last 2 episodes.
I think
so
that's because we had
probably
more
good.
source material
That's
for us,
true.
so there was more for us to talk about. And yeah, and I don't know why, but I feel less drunk after having had 3 shots. I don't know how many shots of tequila and all the wine. And maybe it's just because we were talking and then it was easier to.
Maybe.
get into it.
As soon as we stand up, we're going to fall over. Who knows? But
Yeah, we turn the camera off and be like, oh, oh God.
Whoops. Oh.
Okay, so since we have said so much, and this is probably going to be a really long video as is,
Mm-hmm.
we should probably end it here. So if you liked watching us discuss The Witcher or any of our other videos, please subscribe, like the video. I think there's like a bell or something to keep updated too about videos. I'm not as knowledgeable about that one. I know that some of the YouTubers I follow say ring the bell so that you can be updated when we post a video. Though this is going to go on my channel that I also post speed drawing videos, so you can see my artwork too. If you ring the bell, you'll be notified when I post those as well. But subscribe, like the video, comment, let us know what you think, what you'd want to hear us review, constructive criticism, no mean comments. I guess that's it. Yeah.
Alright.
So, hopefully we'll be doing some more videos. Next video, we should be wearing different clothes.
One more thing.
That would be really weird if we ended up wearing the same outfits. Because we're going to record it a separate day for the next 3 videos.
You never know. There's only so many things in the closet.
Yeah.
We'll see. Alright. Well, that's fun. Alright, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks. Morning. Annabeth told me, one of my daughters told me that, sometimes it feels like I have sequins on my legs. I said, that's right, honey. I'm not hairy. I'm bedazzled.
That should be, we should make a sticker that says, I'm not hairy, I'm bedazzled.